They tell you the North Sea wants to kill you. Every safety briefing, every introduction video, every laminated poster in every corridor, on every rig from Aberdeen to the Shetlands. The message is always the same. The sea is trying to kill you. Respect it. But here's what they don't put on the posters. Here's what they're never put in the introduction video. The sea isn't what you need to worry about. It's what lives under the rig, in the parts that don't appear on any schematic, in the section of Deck E that was welded shut in 1991 and never reopened, in the space between the waterline and the seabed, where the support columns disappear into black water that hasn't seen daylight since the platform was built. The sea wants to kill you, yes, but what's down there? It wants something worse. Let me start from the beginning. My name's Callum. I'm from Hartlepool, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is a town in the northeast of England where the main industries are leaving and drinking, sometimes at the same time. I've been working at the Caterpillar plant in Peterlee for 11 years when they announced redundancies. 240 of us gone, just like that. Middle of January. Happy New Year. Here's your P45. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. I was 41, newly divorced, living in a one-bed flat above a kebab shop on Murray Street, and I had about 6 weeks of savings before the bank started sending the kind of letters that come in red envelopes. My brother-in-law, well, ex-brother-in-law technically, but Neil's always been decent. He worked as a drilling engineer for one of the operators out in Aberdeen. He made a few calls. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a helicopter at Dice Airport, wearing a survival suit the colour of a traffic cone, clutching a holdall with 3 weeks worth of clothes, flying 130 miles out into the North Sea towards a platform called Athena Bravo. I want to be clear about something. I'm not a superstitious man. I don't believe in ghosts. I didn't believe in ghosts. I'm telling you this because I need you to understand that what happened on that rig, it didn't happen to someone who was looking for it. It happened to a redundant factory worker from Hartlepool who needed 28 days of pay so he could keep his flat. The Athena Bravo is, or was, a semi-submersible production platform. That means it floats. It's not bolted into the seabed like a jacket platform. It's held in a place by anchors and thrusters, hovering above the water like a metal island. 80 metres of open sea between the lowest deck and the ocean floor. The accommodation block sits on top, 5 floors of cabins, a mess hall, a TV room and a gym. Below that, the production modules. Below that, the cellar deck, which sits close to the water line. And below that, water. Just water, supposedly. The crew was about 120 blokes, a few women too, mostly in catering and engineering. Everyone worked 12-hour shifts. Days ran 6 to 6, nights ran 6 to 6. I was put on nights, maintenance technician. My job was to do rounds of the production modules between 6 PM and 6 AM, checking gauges, logging pressure readings, replacing filters, making sure nothing was leaking that shouldn't be leaking. It was boring work, honest, monotonous, well-paid boring work, exactly what I needed, or so I thought. On my first night, a lad called Darren officially, but no one called him that, was assigned to shadow me for the week, show me the rounds, teach me the equipment, make sure I didn't wander into the wrong module and get myself killed. Daz was maybe 25, skinny, ginger, from somewhere near Inverness, talked constantly, the kind of bloke who couldn't walk past a piece of equipment without telling you a story about the time it nearly exploded, or the time someone got their hand caught in it, or the time someone was sick on it after a dodgy fish Friday. I liked him. He made the 12 hours go faster. Around midnight on that first shift, we were in Module 3, the gas compression area. It's loud in there. The compressors run constantly. This deep mechanical drone that you can feel in the back of your teeth. Daz was showing me the gauge log sheet when he stopped mid-sentence. Just stopped, looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen on him before. Serious, older somehow. He reached into the breast pocket of his overalls and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was photocopied, creased soft from being folded and refolded a dozen times. He handed it to me. "Right," he said, "this isn't official. You won't find it in any induction pack, but every lad on the night shift knows it. You need to read it, remember it, and you need to follow it. Every night, no exceptions." I unfolded the paper. It was a list, typed, but not on any company letterhead. No logo, no date, no author. Just 5 rules under a heading that read, "Night shift, read before your first round." I'll tell you what they said. I've read them enough times I can recite them from memory. Rule 1. Between 1 AM and 3 AM, do not descend below deck C. If your rounds require you to access the cellar deck during these hours, skip it. Log it as access restricted. Schedule. Nobody will question this. Rule 2. If you hear knocking coming from inside the pipework, rhythmic knocking, like a pattern, do not stop to listen. Do not attempt to identify the source. Continue your round at a normal pace. Do not run. Rule 3. The emergency stairwell between deck D and the cellar deck has a fire door at the bottom. This door should always be closed. If you find it open, do not close it yourself. Radio the control room and say the words, "Deck E access." They will know what to do. Leave the area immediately. Rule 4. There is no deck E. Rule 5. If, at any point during your shift, you feel a sudden and overwhelming urge to go down, not to a specific place, just down, towards the water, stop whatever you are doing, go directly to the mess hall, sit under the fluorescent lights, do not leave until the urge passes. If it does not pass within 30 minutes, wake your OIM. I read it twice, then I looked at Daz. Is this a wind-up? He didn't smile. That's what got me. Daz smiled at everything. Daz had smiled while telling me a story about a bloke who lost 3 fingers to a pipe wrench, and now he wasn't smiling. It's not a wind-up, Callum. Rule 4 says there's no deck E, but Rule 3 mentions deck E access. That's a contradiction. Daz took the paper back, folded it carefully along the same creases, and put it back into his pocket. "Aye," he said, "it is." And that was all he said about it. The first 2 weeks were fine. Better than fine, actually. There was a rhythm to rig life that I found oddly comforting. 6 on, 6 off, same as everyone else. You eat your meals in the mess, and the food was good, properly good. Steak night Saturdays, fish Fridays. The catering lads took pride in it. You sleep in a 2-berth cabin, and your cabin mate is on the opposite shift. You've essentially got a room to yourself. There's a gym, a sauna, a TV room with Sky Sports. It's like being on a very industrial cruise ship that never goes anywhere. The night shift crew were a decent bunch, mostly Scottish lads, a few Geordies, a Welshman named Rees who nobody could understand after midnight. We'll do our rounds, meet up in the mess for a brew after 2 AM, swap stories, normal stuff. Some will bring a packet of hobnobs from home and they'll be gone within an hour. I started to forget about the rules. Not entirely. They were always there, in the back of my mind, the way a weird dream stays with you through to the next day. But I'd done 14 night shifts and nothing had happened. No knocking in the pipes, no open fire doors, no mysterious urge to go down. Just gauges, log sheets, filters and tea. I started to think Daz had been having me on, some sort of initiation for the new lad, classic offshore humour. There was only one thing, small, barely worth mentioning. Every night, at some point between 1 AM and 3 a.m, never at the same time but always within that window, the temperature on deck C would drop. Not dramatically, maybe 4 or 5 degrees, enough that I'll notice it during my round, enough that I'll zip my coveralls up to the neck and think about fetching a jumper. I mentioned it to Daz once. He said, "Aye, the insulation's shite down there," and that was that. But here's what I noticed that Daz didn't explain. The temperature drop didn't happen everywhere on deck C. It happened in one specific corridor, the one that runs past the sealed fire door at the top of the emergency stairwell, the one that, according to Rule C, leads down to the cellar deck, the one that, according to Rule 4, does not lead to deck E, because there is no deck E. Every night I'd walk past that door, and every night it was closed, sealed, a heavy steel fire door with a push bar, painted red, with a small square of reinforced glass at head height, and every night, as I walked past it, the air would be just that little bit colder. I started pressing my hand against the door as I passed, just lightly, just to see. It was cold, not cool, cold, like the metal of a car bonnet in January. As if whatever was on the other side of that door wasn't heated, wasn't insulated, was open to something much, much colder than the inside of an oil rig should ever be. I logged the temperature drops in my round sheet. Every morning, when I checked the log, the entries were still there, but someone had drawn a small line through each one, in pencil, not enough to obscure the reading, just enough to say, "Noted." I never found out who. Night 17. I was on deck C at 1:15, doing the standard round. Check the separator gouges, log the flow line pressure, inspect the flare header for any signs of corrosion. Routine. The kind of work you can do on autopilot, which is dangerous in itself because that's when you stop paying attention. I was standing at the junction where corridor C4 meets the main walkway, about 30 meters from the sealed fire door, when I heard it. Knocking. Not loud, not aggressive, almost polite, if that makes any sense. 3 knocks, evenly spaced. A pause, then 3 more. The same rhythm, coming from somewhere below me and to the left, coming from inside the pipework that ran along the ceiling of the corridor, the 18-inch gas condensate line that fills the main separator. 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. Rule 2. If you hear knocking coming from inside the pipework, rhythmic knocking, like a pattern, do not stop to listen, do not attempt to identify the source. Continue your round at a normal pace, do not run. I stopped listening. I'm joking, of course I stopped. I stood completely still in the corridor and I listened, because I'm a maintenance technician and knocking inside a gas condensate line is either a paranormal event or a serious mechanical fault, and one of those is significantly more likely than the other. The knocking continued, 3 and 3 and 3, patient, rhythmic, like someone tapping a wedding ring against the inside of the pipe. I reached up and I pressed my palm flat against the pipe. You can sometimes feel vibrations from the compressors transmitted through the line. It's normal, it's nothing, but this wasn't that. The vibrations I felt were localized. They were coming from a specific point in the pipe, about 2 meters ahead of me, where the line made a 90-degree bend and descended through the floor towards the cellar deck. The knocking stopped. Silence. Just the background hum. Just the generators and the sea. And then, very faintly, so faintly I almost convinced myself I imagined it, I heard something else, coming from that same bend in the pipe, not knocking this time, breathing, slow, deep, wet breathing, like someone drawing air through a throat full of seawater. I took my hand off the pipe, the breathing stopped. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, 15. My hand was shaking. I remember noticing that. Noticing my own hand trembling and thinking, that's strange, I'm not cold. Then I did what Rule 2 told me to do. I continued my round at a normal pace. I did not run. But I didn't go anywhere near that fire door for the rest of the night. I skipped the last section of my Deck C round and logged it as access restricted, schedule. Just like Rule 1 said. Nobody questioned it. Nobody ever questioned it. In the mess hall at 2 AM, I sat under the fluorescent lights with my tea and I didn't say a word. Reese was talking about the football. Someone was arguing about whether you were allowed to bring an air fryer onto the rig. Normal things, human things. I looked around the table at the other night shift lads and I tried to work out who else had heard what I heard. Who else had pressed their hand against a pipe at 1 AM and felt something breathing on the other side. Nobody met my eye, but nobody looked surprised either. Over the next 5 shifts, it got worse. Not dramatically, not all at once. It crept. Night 19, the knocking again. Same corridor, same pipe, same rhythm, but louder, and it followed me. I walked the length of corridor C4 at a steady pace, eyes forward, and the knocking moved through the pipework alongside me, matching my speed exactly, as if whatever was inside the pipe was walking in parallel with me on the other side of the seal. As if whatever was inside the pipe was walking in parallel with me on the other side of the steel. Night 21, I found a wet footprint on the deck plating outside the sealed fire door. A single bare footprint, left foot, pointing towards the door. The water was dark, not clean, not rainwater. It smelled of brine and something else, something organic, something old. By the time I came back with my phone to photograph it, it was gone. The deck plating was dry. Night 23, Daz pulled me aside into the changing room before shift. He looked like he hadn't slept. His eyes were bloodshot and his hands were restless, tapping his thighs, scratching his wrist, fiddling with his sip. Have you felt it? He asked. Felt what? The pull. I hadn't. Not then. You will, he said, and he walked away. Night 24. I felt it. I was in Module 2, checking the pressure release valve, and it hit me like a wave of nausea. Except it wasn't nausea, it was longing. That's the only word for it. A deep, physical aching pull in my chest, dragging me downwards, not towards a specific place, just down, towards the water, towards whatever was beneath the rig, beneath the water line, beneath the cellar deck, beneath the place that doesn't exist. Rule 5. Go directly to the mess hall, sit under the fluorescent lights, and do not leave until the urge passes. I went. I sat. The lights buzzed overhead like trapped insects. The urge faded after about 20 minutes, but those 20 minutes were the longest of my life because every cell in my body was screaming at me to get up, walk out of the mess hall, go down the stairs, keep going past the cellar deck, keep going past the fire door, keep going into the cold and the dark and the wet. And I didn't know why. I didn't know what was down there. I just knew, with a certainty that felt like religious conviction, that it wanted me to come. I gripped the edges of the mess table so hard I left fingernail marks in the laminate. Night 25 was when everything broke. It was 2:17 AM. I was on deck D, one level above the cellar deck, checking a bank of heat exchangers. Routine, quiet. The rest of the night crew were in other modules. I was alone. I heard a sound from below, not knocking, not breathing, screaming. A man's voice, muffled, distorted, but unmistakably human. Coming from below the deck plating, coming from below the cellar, coming from behind the sealed fire door. And then, cutting through the scream, perfectly clear, I heard Daz's voice. "Callum! Callum! Help me! I've got the door open! Callum!" I ran. I didn't think. I didn't consult the rules. I heard a man I knew, a man I liked, a 25-year-old lad from Inverness who smiled at everything, screaming my name, and I ran towards him. Down the emergency stairwell, metal steps ringing under my boots, down past deck D, down to the cellar deck. The air getting colder with every step, my breath started to cloud, my overalls doing nothing against the cold. I reached the fire door at the bottom of the stairwell. It was open. Rule 3. If you find it open, do not close it yourself. Radio the control room and say the words, "Deck E access," and leave the area immediately. I should have radioed. I should have turned around. I should have followed the rules. But I could hear Daz, deeper now, below me. His voice was coming from the other side of the open door, from the stairwell that continued downwards, the stairwell that shouldn't exist, because Rule 4 says there is no deck E, and stairs that go down from cellar deck have nowhere to go except towards a deck that doesn't exist. "Callum, please, it's so cold, please." I stepped towards the door. The stairwell continued down. The walls were different here, not painted, bare steel, wet with condensation. No, not condensation, sea water. The walls were sweating sea water. The steps were slick with it. The air tasted of salt and rust and something underneath both of those things. Something biological, like the smell of a rock pool at the low tide, but concentrated, intensified, wrong. I descended 7 steps. On the 8th step, the screaming stopped. Everything stopped. The generators, the hum, the ever-present mechanical heartbeat of the rig that you stop noticing after your first day because it's always there, like your own pulse. It was gone. The only sound was the sea, not above me, not outside, below me, close, impossibly close, as if the water was right there, one deck down, lapping at the steel. And then the light changed. The emergency strip lights along the stairwell ceiling, harsh white LED. They dimmed, not flickered, dimmed, slowly, as if something was drawing the power out of them. In the growing dark, I looked down the remaining stairs. There was a landing below, and on that landing, there was a door, a heavy steel door, identical to the fire door above, except this one was painted black, and it was covered, every inch of it, in handprints. Dozens of them, hundreds, overlapping, smeared, pressed into the surface into something dark and wet that I will not describe, because I know what it was, and you don't need me to tell you. The door was open, just a crack, maybe 3 inches, and through that crack I could see something moving. I couldn't make out what it was, the light was too dim and the gap was too narrow. But I could see movement, slow, rhythmic, side to side, like something swaying in current, like something floating upright in water. And I could hear, just barely, the breathing, the same wet, deep, gurgling breathing from the pipes. Except it wasn't coming from one source anymore. It was coming from many, dozens, breathing together, in rhythm, waiting. I felt the pull again, stronger than before, not in my chest this time, in my legs. My legs wanted to carry me down those last steps. My legs wanted to walk me to the door and push it open and step through in whatever flooded, freezing, lightless space existed on the other side. I don't know how, but I didn't. I turned around. I walked up the stairs. I did not run. I couldn't. My body was fighting itself. Every step upwards felt like walking through wet cement. Something behind me didn't want me to leave. Something behind me was pulling at me with a force that wasn't physical but was real. As real as gravity, as real as the cold, as real as the seawater running down the walls. I reached the fire door. I stepped through. I did not close it. Rule 3 says do not close it yourself. I grabbed my radio. Control, this is Callum, maintenance tech, Deck C emergency stairwell, Deck E access. 3 seconds of silence, then a voice, calm, almost bored, as if they'd been expecting the call. Acknowledged. Return to accommodation block. Do not return to Deck C tonight. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my bunk in my cabin with the overhead lights on and the door locked, and I waited for 6 AM. At shift change, I went looking for Daz. I checked the mess hall, the changing rooms, the TV room. I asked Reese, I asked the OIM, I asked the catering staff. Nobody had seen Daz. Here's the thing, they didn't say he's not here or he's on a different shift or he went home. They said nothing. They looked at me the way you look at someone who asked a question they already know the answer to. And then they changed the subject. I checked the cabin list on the notice board outside the OIM's office. Daz's name had been removed, not crossed out, removed. The list had been reprinted, as if he'd never been on it. I lasted 1 more week. I kept my head down, I did my rounds, I stayed above Deck C between 1 and 3. I didn't go near the fire door, I didn't listen to the knocking, which happened every night now, louder each time, the rhythm faster, more insistent, as if whatever was in the pipes was getting impatient. On my last night, I was in the mess hall at 3 AM, sitting under the fluorescent lights, trying not to think about the pool, which hadn't gone away, not fully, not since the night I'd gone through the door. It was always there, a low hum at the base of my skull, a weight in my legs, a compass needle in my chest, pointing down. Old Jimmy, a rigger who'd been on Athena Bravo for 8 years, quiet bloke, never said much, sat down across from me with a mug of tea. He looked at me for a long time, then he said, "The lad before you, and the one before him, they all hear it eventually. The ones who go down to look, some of them never come back. Most of them come back, but they come back lighter, like something stayed behind, like they left a piece of themselves down there and the door closed on it." He took a sip of his tea. "The ones who don't come back, we don't talk about them, we don't ask. The company sends a new name and the helicopter brings a new lad and the list gets reprinted. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. What's down there, Jimmy?" He put his mug down, stared at the table. "I don't know, but it was here before the rig. It was here before the oil. I think it was here before the sea." He stood up, rinsed his mug in the sink, and walked out. I flew back to Aberdeen the next morning. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I didn't collect my final week's pay. I stepped off the helicopter at Dice, stripped off my survival suit, walked through the terminal, and got in my car, drove south for 6 hours without stopping. That was 4 months ago. I'm back in Hartlepool, back in the flat above the kebab shop, back to the red envelopes from the bank. I took a job stacking shells at the Asda on Marina Way because it's work, and it's on land, and the only thing beneath my feet is concrete and soil and the comforting noble bones of the earth. But it followed me. I know it did. Because every night, between 1 and 3 AM, I wake up, not from a nightmare, not from a sound. I wake up because my legs are cold. The cold from the stairwell, the cold from behind the fire door. And every night, for about 30 minutes, I feel the pull, down, not towards anything Pacific, not towards the sea, not towards the rig, just down, through the mattress, through the floor, through the foundations of the building and the rock beneath it and the ancient, unknowable dark beneath that. I grip the edges of my bed, I stare at the ceiling light, I wait for it to pass. It always passes. So far, Last Tuesday, I got a voicemail, unknown number, Aberdeen area code. No voice, just background noise, the hum of generators, the groan of metal under pressure, the deep rhythmic pulse of a working rig. And underneath all of it, just barely audible, just barely there, 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks, pause, 3 knocks. And then, at the very end, right before the call cut out, breathing, not one set of lungs, many,